We now come on to the 10-minute rule motion. Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to introduce a system of proportional representation for parliamentary elections and for local government elections in England and for connected purposes. We are experiencing an unprecedented political moment in this country. Our most recent general election in July this year returned a government with the second biggest majority of seats for any government since the Second World War, but on the lowest share of the vote ever recorded for a winning party. The first-past-the-post voting system used in UK parliamentary elections has delivered 2/3 of the seats in the House of Commons to the Labour Party, who attracted just 1/3 of the votes cast. Thanks to first-past-the-post, nearly 60% of people who voted in the general election in July are not represented in Parliament by the candidate that they voted for. This is the most disproportionate election result that this country has ever seen. We are also seeing record levels of disillusionment with the political process, with citizens becoming increasingly disengaged. This is reflected in the fact that turnout in the 2024 general election was the second lowest since 1918 at just under 60%. Over 40% of registered voters in the UK thought so little of the political process they didn't think it worth expressing a preference for one candidate over another. There are many urgent and pressing challenges facing the UK today, but it is essential that the vast majority of its citizens actively support the mechanisms by which the decisions are made to address them. Increasing levels of disengagement threaten our ability to respond both to immediate challenges and to longer-term issues. The Liberal Democrats believe, and have always believed, that a fair voting system is an essential bedrock of a functioning democracy. Democracy has proved to be the most effective and enduring of governing systems because it relies on a broad base of support across the population. A faulty voting system delivering a majority government on a minority vote undermines democracy and its ability to deliver effective government. And that is why I am presenting this 10-minute rule bill today. In the face of growing worldwide threats to democratic governments and institutions, the UK needs to urgently reassert the value of participative democracy as an essential component in peaceful and prosperous societies. To do this, we need to respond to the democratic challenges that have emerged in our own country by adopting the provisions in this bill. The bill would introduce... With pleasure.
Thank the member for her speech and for...
Order. Can I remind honourable members that interventions are not taken during the 10-minute rule speech? Sarah Rolfe.
Apologies, Madam Deputy Speaker. The bill would introduce a system of proportional representation for parliamentary elections and for local government elections in England. Liberal Democrats have been calling for the introduction of a single transferable vote system, or STV, whereby candidates on a ballot paper are ranked according to the voter's preference. This system would protect the critical local link between MPs and their constituencies, which is so valuable in connecting individual voters with the Parliament that makes decisions on their behalf. Constituency MPs understand the specific issues that voters in their seats are experiencing, as well as connecting the broader issues of the country at a local level. A system of STV would preserve this aspect of our current system, but would also ensure that MPs enjoyed the broad support of the majority of their electors. In the most recent general election, the number of MPs elected to this chamber with more than 50% of the votes cast in their constituency was just 96, a decrease from 421 in the previous 2019 election and 476 in the general election before that. 10 of our colleagues in this current Parliament were elected with the votes of fewer than 30% of their constituents who turned out. Far fewer MPs in this place can say today that they have the support of the majority of their constituents, or even a broad base of support, than ever before. Proportional electoral systems have been used successfully for elections in the UK's devolved parliaments and assemblies since the turn of the century. One of the advantages of adopting STV for all local elections in England, as well as general elections, is that it is already in use in 2 of the 4 nations which make up the UK. And now that Welsh councils also have the power to adopt STV if they wish, it may soon be 3 out of the 4 nations. So proportional representation on an STV system is not alien to the UK. Many millions of people across the country will already be familiar with voting in this way. The use of proportional systems, which retain a close constituency link across the UK, makes Westminster's use of first past the post the outlier rather than the norm. Changing the voting system for UK parliamentary elections is not the only thing that needs to be done to restore democratic engagement in this country. The shambles of the last Conservative government created a crisis for democracy in this country. Thanks to their cronyism, rule-breaking, sleaze scandals, public trust in government is worryingly low. Successive Conservative Prime Ministers acted without integrity and treated Parliament and the people with disdain. In the previous Parliament, the Conservatives weakened the independence of the Electoral Commission, introduced disproportionate voting systems for mayoral elections in England, and introduced the undemocratic voter ID scheme. The Liberal Democrats believe that public confidence in democracy is vital for effective and functioning governments, and that consequently we must take all possible steps to rebuild public trust in politics. We will continue to call for this government to scrap the voter ID scheme, and we will hold them to account for their conduct in office. But the most effective change we can make to clear up the mess that the Conservatives left is to change the voting system and ensure that the voices of voters across the British Isles can properly be heard. I'm glad to know that support for electoral reform comes not only from the Liberal Democrat benches but from across the House. I'm pleased that Labour members in particular agree with me that we need proportional representation after voting overwhelmingly in favour of PR at their conference 2 years ago. More importantly, recent polling shows that a majority of the British public are now in favour of scrapping first past the post and moving to proportional representation. The all-party parliamentary group for fair elections launched last week with the support of over 100 MPs, and their report, Free Not Fair, highlights many of the structural issues which have led to the decline of public trust in politics and engagement with elections. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, we must take urgent action to protect democratic processes and institutions in the UK from threats both here in the UK and abroad. We need to listen to the warning bell sounded by the general election that the citizens we seek to serve and who must abide by the laws we pass are becoming disenchanted with the political process. If we want to continue to be a beacon of democracy across the world, we must ensure that it serves its purpose, both in giving a voice to the people and in delivering prosperity and stability. We cannot do the latter if we fail at the first. First past the post is a broken and unfair system. This summer, the Labour Party won a landslide election victory, securing 63% of the seats in the House of Commons in return for just 34% of the vote. This system leaves millions of voices unheard and creates a divisive, adversarial political climate where collaboration is discouraged and accountability is often sidestepped. The Liberal Democrats have long championed proportional representation, advocating for a voting system where every vote truly counts. We must modernise our electoral system, create a fairer process to engage voters, listen to the needs of our constituents and rebuild trust in politics. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
That the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. I call Lewis Coffey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I support continuing the first past the post system. When our constituents arrived at their polling station on the 4th of July, they knew what to expect. If their chosen candidate received more votes than any other, then that is who would be elected as their MP. There is an elegance to this simplicity. In our democracy, it is those who win the most votes in each of our 650 constituencies win those 650 constituencies. It cannot be denied that voters would be confronted with a far more complicated system if any type of proportional representation were to be introduced. Crucially, after the election, every one of our constituents knows who to turn to when they wish to contact their Member of Parliament. For me, this is the most important feature of our democratic system. In a more proportional system, like single transferable vote, advocated by some across this House, constituencies would be represented by multiple Members of Parliament. from various parties. Clearly, this would polarise our communities, and voters may only contact the MP they had voted for, and it would absolve us from ending our duty from representing all of our constituents. It would be far difficult to get to know the several politicians representing your area and to hold them to account at the next general election. Constituents struggling with complex issues may have already exhausted other options. We do not want to make them ask, which MP should I contact as well? First past the post creates a strong connection, for good or for bad, between residents and their representatives. Under our current system, I can represent my home of Broxbourne. Every one of my neighbours, whether they have an issue with their housing, pension or anything else, knows who to turn to. There is a clear link that simply would be lost under a more proportional system. A sole representative for a small constituency allows each of us in this place to remain grounded and ensures that every corner of our United Kingdom is properly represented. There is also a simplicity and stability in the result that emerges from our first-past-the-post general elections. For the most part, first-past-the-post produces governments with clear workable majorities that can last the full length of their term. Voters want strong governments with the ability to deliver policies in their manifesto, not the chaos of constant disagreements and repeated elections. Under proportional representation, the party that receives the most votes does not automatically nor quickly form the next government. Instead, as we are seeing now in Ireland, political parties go behind locked doors to do deals amongst themselves. Discussions lasting for months until after the general election has taken place. This is plainly undemocratic, with voters given no further say. When coalition agreement eventually comes, it satisfies no one. Under the first-past-the-post system, each party presents their policy, Madam Deputy Speaker, at the election, and they put it forward to the British people, and that is the basis on which votes are cast at our general elections in the United Kingdom. In first-past-the-post elections, it is clear who will be in power and who will be in opposition. As we've seen in the recent general election, it is possible for voters to change who governs them if that is, of course, the choice they wish to make. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to remind the House that the British people have made their opposition to this clear. In 2011, 13 million people voted to retain the first-past-the-post system. Less people. 13 million people voted to retain the first-past-the-post system. And at the last general election, neither of the largest two parties proposed a change in that electoral system. For those reasons, I think it would be plainly wrong to make any changes to our elections in the United Kingdom.
The question is that the honourable member have leave to bring in the bill. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobbies. The question is, as on the order paper, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no.
No.
Tellers for the ayes, Tom Morrison, Jamie Stone. Tellers for the noes, Sir Julian Lewis, Blake Stevenson. Order, order.
The ayes to the right, 138. The noes to the left, 136.
The ayes were 138, the noes were 136. The ayes have it, the ayes have it. Oh no. Who will prepare and bring in the bill?
Wendy Chamberlain, David Chadwick, Saoirse Eastwood, Marie Goldman, Richard Ford, Tim Farron, Ed Davey, Christine Jardine, Dr Al Pinkerton, Daisy Cooper and myself, Madam.
Sarah Olney.
Elections Proportional Representation Bill.
Second reading what day?
Friday, 24th of January.
Friday the 24th of January.